Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com. Welcome to the very first live in-person recording of Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert. We are on location at the Red Roof Inn in Jackson, Tennessee. And Doug, we are not alone.
Gene, I'm not sure if you should give our location or not away, but anyway, we are in Jackson, Tennessee, and I have got one of the guys that taught me as much as any other person other than probably my brother and my dad. The one and only Wildfire, Tommy Rich.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be here on the Dangerous Show. Of all people, never thought Dougie would have a Dead Gum podcast, and he's killing it. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I go way back to the beginning. I mean, talk about Tommy Gilbert. I used to work at the gas station, and they would meet each other at the other gas station next to us in the Gulf. And at nighttime, I worked night shifts, and there wasn't no cars there, and Tommy'd be working on his car sometime. I'd run over and talk to him, and then, of course, I met him through Eddie Marlin. Eddie Marlin and my dad was a good friends. And so anyway, I used to go to the matches with Tommy and Eddie. I went to Evansville and Louisville and, of course, Nashville. And then, of course, Eddie started taking pictures and worked his way on up in the business. And here come Doug. I remember him when he was just knee-high. And, so, I mean, we're more like a family. I mean, I love him as much as I do my own family because we've been together as long as a family.
Hey, and Tommy's got a million stories, which, like I said, Gene, I do also, but Tommy's got a million stories, and I know you've got some questions and stuff, but I mean, and I've got a few things I actually want to ask Tommy, but what we got going on, Gene? Like I said, I'm glad to be on here, and I think this is our 7th show, right? Am I right? Wrong?
7 or 8.
7, 8, somewhere around there.
I usually have those numbers in front of me, but today we don't have a computer. We're just talking into a mic.
Right.
Look at this. Tommy knows better than we do what number we're on. That shows he has been listening, man. That's awesome.
It's because you called me and told me you wanted to be on number 8.
Well, at least you didn't. Randy Hells gave us grief because we didn't have him on first. At least Tommy ain't offended that we waited this long, Doug, but we wanted to build up to it.
Oh, no, we got to build up to the stars.
Well, I appreciate what you just said there, Tommy, about him being like family, because Doug has said on this show more than once that you're like a brother to him, and
no doubt.
And getting to see you guys interact at these things with the fans and everything, you can tell that. But like I said, this is the first one that we've recorded live and in person, and I couldn't be more excited that you're our guest, because what better than to bring Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert together live and in person.
Well, you know what, Gene, what's so cool, and I think most people know, we're getting together tonight. It's for a Hall of Fame deal that me and Tommy got cut a couple promos in, and it's a lot of the legends are around and stuff and everything. And I get to see Tommy more than I see most people. Man, it's always great to get to see Tommy and us get to talk about old things, new things, sports. I mean, it ain't just. I mean, we talk a little bit wrestling, but we talk about everything in life and everything. And man, just like Tommy said, I mean, my dad's known Tommy since Tommy was a kid. Tommy's known me and my brother since we was kids. So people don't kind of understand. You really got to say it, and you got to get them to think about that to really understand that. We all have lives too.
Right.
I mean, it's not just. And what we're going to talk about, and people are interested in, is us in the ring and wrestling and everything. But we also have a life out of the ring, and there's a few of us, not a whole lot of us, but there's a few of us that are like family.
Right.
And you know, and that's a great thing about it. I mean, it's like the shindig they having today here in Jackson, Tennessee. I mean, you know, the who's of Memphis wrestling's here. You had Jerry the King Lawler, but Superstar Bill Dundee, Rock and Roll Express, and all these guys started here. I mean, Spellbinder. You know, I mean, it's just a list of Bruno, Coco Beware. You know, Dave Brown's here. Dave Brown,
Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah. So and to get all these guys, because I hadn't seen some of these guys in 20 years. So to get us all together and see the fans turn out the way they did, I mean, it's been a real good day. We're fixing to do the Hall of Fame thing here in a little bit, but we want to come. I want to be on the show and just give a big shout out to everybody and tell them to tune in.
Man, how good does it make you guys feel? You know, I sat behind y'all at the table today and just kind of watched you guys interact with the fans. And how warm and fuzzy does it make you feel when these fans come up? And I know Doug trying to point out to me, there's a guy that came up, he bought a picture of the Memphis Mafia, and he said he was 5 years old when this picture was taken. He was kind of asking you guys, like, who's this and who's that and everything. How cool is it to see these younger people take an interest in the old school wrestling and see what it means from the young people down up to the old people at all points in between, to see what this means to them to meet you guys?
Well, it's I mean, it's a great feeling. I mean, and you see some of these kids, you know, sometimes you think you're having a bad day. Sometimes you look around and realize how lucky we got it. And it's just been a big day here. You know, just touched a lot of hearts, man, and touched my heart too. Just to see some, I mean, like you said, the old fans are there, but there's new people there too, like the kids you're talking about.
And you know what? And I don't mean to cut you off, Tommy, but one of the cool things, Gene, I don't think you did hear when me and Tommy walked out and took pictures with that kid, was his mom was standing there beside of him, and she was about my age, I think, and she said kids, and there was three of them, the young man that you was talking about and two girls, and she said, these two right here, kids, was two of the baddest guys that you didn't want to mess with. Which I had my bat in my hand. She said, he'd hit them with this bat, and he said, and Tommy Rich would do everything. But see, it's their parents, you know, guiding them on, and they're looking at everything. But I mean, it's cool to me that their parents, when they come up, and their parents, and then the kids, and I mean, it's always, you know, a lot of kids with their parents, and they introduce us to their kids, and like they've either shown them on like the old videos, like on YouTube or on all the different things. And to me, that's what's really cool. I mean, we're talking about people that's like you saw, that's 10 years old. You know, I mean, no, they didn't see it, but their parents have showed it to them on some kind of social media and on streaming and everything. And to me, that's what's really cool. And what's so cool to me, Gene, me and you've talked about it. And like I said, I got a million stories with Tommy, and Tommy's got a million of his own. I got a million of my own. But it's cool for them to come out. And man, if it wasn't for the fans, and you know, I always heard my dad and my brother say this, and heard Tommy Rich say this, if it was not for those fans, they wouldn't be a Wildfire. There wouldn't have been a Hot Stuff. There wouldn't have been a Tommy Gilbert. There wouldn't have been a Dangerous Doug Gilbert. And that's what I think sometimes when you see guys and they're not very nice to the fans, I don't think they think of that aspect of it.
Right. Those are the people that put food on your table, fed your families, and made your living.
Exactly. And like me and you've talked, and I said to you, Gene, before, I said, we can say there's a lot of different aspects in this, but it winds up at the end of the day, it's dollars and cents. And I mean, those people was paying their hard-earned dollars that they go to work for every day. And us guys in this room know about that, going to work and everything. And I mean, that's what I try to be, as nice and respectful. Man, I appreciate every person that's come out and bought a ticket and watched us. And I mean, if they didn't buy a ticket and they watched us, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I could feel that in the interactions I watched you guys have. And I know for me personally, I remember being a little kid and my dad and my uncle sitting around and talking about, you know, the interns and Tommy Gilbert and guys before my time.
Who was the intern's manager, Gene?
Dr. Ken Ramey.
You dang right. And you know what they said, Dr. Ken Ramey, this is, like I said, Tom, we'll go off on different things, but one of Dr. Ken Ramey's, one of his biggest deals was, they said he would about stay in the dressing room all night, right, Tommy? He was like the last one to leave the building and everything. But I remember, and one cool thing, the last time I saw, and you'll probably know the date, Gene. Gene's great on dates where I'm not, Tommy, and you probably aren't. But when Jerry Lawler had a show, and it was right across the line in Mississippi, but he brought a lot of the older guys back, and wound up being in the main event. It wound up being me wrestling him with Fargo in Lawler's corner, and my dad in my corner. But he brought Ken Ramey and the tag team, the original, and it was the original interns, Tommy, was
Tom Andrews
and Bill Starr. And he brought those two, not no fake interns or no fake manager. Lawler flew all three of them in. I think they all still lived around Kansas City or Kansas out there. He flew all three of them in for that because now, and I was going to say he wouldn't say this now, but he probably would say it. They was like some of his favorite people growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, he loved them as a tag team.
Like I said, I can remember my dad and my uncles talking about those guys, and then, once I started being around wrestling, I've met 100 guys who always claim to be one of the original interns. It's like one of the oldest things in the book.
I should say you was either the original intern, or if you was a little bit overweight, you was original assassin.
That's right. So before we move past the Hall of Fame that's going on tonight, Doug, we recently talked to the Dirty White Boy, Tony Anthony. You're going to be inducting him. Tommy, tell me a little bit about your memories of Dirty White Boy, your interactions with him over the years.
Well, Tony, man, he was a heck, he was a heck of a showman. Then he teamed up with Lynn Denton. They went as the Grapplers, and they was a heck of a tag team. Now they kicked some butts. And
hey, you know what, Tommy? He was hot. Kind of asked Gene. He said, "Well, Doug, are you going into the Hall of Fame?" I said, "Well, Tony, I went into it in 2017. He said, "So you mean you're done in it and I'm not?" And I said, "Well, Tony, maybe I was just a little cheaper than you was. I thought that was."
And we get Randy a bunch of heat.
Right. I thought, don't get hot at me. I can't help it.
So, yeah. But Tony, I mean, all around, great guy in the dressing room. Just, always, upper. Some guys you get around and they just want to bring you down with them. And Tony was always up tempo.
Good guy.
No matter, real nice guy.
Oh yeah, he's one of the nice. Everybody that's asked me about that interview, I was like, man, that's one of the nicest guys I've ever met or talked to. I mean, he's a super guy.
Oh,
you ain't talked to me?
Well, I'm talking about on the show.
Okay.
Now Tommy Rich shoots to the top of the list. Tony Anthony goes to number 2 now.
There you go. So that means Randy Hills goes to number 3.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
I don't think Randy's in the top 5. We ain't done the late show ain't even out yet.
We'll be right back. No, we'll leave that in.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
I'm just kidding.
He listens to all these to see if he can get mad, Tommy. So you mentioned, Dirty White Boy was a good singles wrestler, he's a good tag wrestler. You guys are both guys who have had tremendous singles careers and tremendous tag careers, both with other people and with each other. What do you really lean towards? Do you favor single wrestling? Do you favor tag wrestling, depending on what kind of mood you're in or what territory you're in, or what affects that?
Well, it really just according to whether it's one person or two people beating the hell out of you. Because sometimes you need a tag partner and sometimes you don't. And Doug and myself both very fortunate that, you look at the rock and roll and them as a great, one of the greatest tag teams that go down in history. Dangerous Doug and myself, we both had single careers. Then we came together in the USWA. One of the last big runs they had in Memphis was Dangerous Doug, Gilbert, and myself against PG-13. So.
And I guess it also depends on, Tommy, what situation you're in. I mean, like Tommy said, he could wrestle with anybody any night in a singles match, or be in a tag team with about anybody and have a great tag match. But it also depends on what situation he was in or I was in as far as when we go. But now, as far as preferring one or the other, I think Tommy would say like I would. I love teaming with my dad. I love teaming with my brother. I love teaming with Tommy. I had some great partners, and that's what a lot of people can't say and everything. But people that I could always, everybody I've named, I've learned stuff from. And there's not many people that can say that. Now, I'm saying, didn't none of them that was my partners learn from me, but what was good about it was it taught me. And, man, I appreciate it. And that's why so Tommy's like like in the Gilbert family and everything. And, I mean, man, it's just we've done so much different stuff. And, I mean, we could talk, just us three could sit here and talk for days about stories. But, man, there's so much cool stuff, and I mean that I've got a couple questions for Tommy sometime that you'll die laughing when we start talking about them. But as far as the tag and singles, it just depends on what is needed kind of at the time.
And being a tag partner, it ain't just your relationship in the ring. You got a relationship. You spend more time with a tag partner than you do your wife sometimes. I mean, when we was on the road 7 days a week, we was together all the time, so it's not just the in the ring wrestling. You got to have a partner. I mean, because if you can't get along with them in a car making a trip, then the tag ain't gonna work, So we had that relationship, and which I had the same with Eddie, and I had the same with Tommy. I teamed up with all, Tommy and Eddie, and I've had some great tag partners. But as far as like the Austin scenes, like most of us, we do our thing and go about our business. I mean, like Dougie said, and like I say too, we're like a family. So when you go help a brother, it's an honor,
And I mean, anytime the one thing, and I didn't ever have to worry about it, and Tommy didn't neither. If anything ever happened, we was going to be, if anybody ever come, and like I think I told you one night, Gene, me and Tommy was in the ring at the Mid-South Coliseum, and I think we'd spiked piled, drove Jerry Lawler, and all of a sudden I get up and there's some guy standing beside me bigger than me, and I look at him, I think, who is this? So I wrap my arms around him, I slam him to the mat, and I don't no more than get the dude down until Tommy drops a knee right straight on his head. I mean, just straight on his head. And the next thing we go, we're fixing to punch him, and the police have got his foot and drag him out, but it was a fan. Yeah. But that's, they would get that mad and everything, but I mean, that meant you was doing your job.
Bad. When we was bad, we was bad. Yeah. But when we're good too, And, coming to these conventions and everything and doing the signings and stuff, it's an honor. Of course, in Georgia, I was a big baby face anyway. And, just getting out and back when we was doing it, it wasn't just teenage kids coming to what they come to now. It was like families. You'd see the grandparents, you'd see the mom and dad and their kids, so and like you were saying earlier, to see that mother telling her kids about, some of us still have those VHS tapes,
Right.
So I got a couple of them that I play every now and then. So yeah, I love to go back and look at some of the old stuff, and just to know that there's parents that's carrying that on, that's really making us feel,
carrying that tradition on. Yeah. And what's cool is, and there's different stories in which, Gene, we can go on for days and days about this, but one of the things I did want to ask Tommy, but like I said, we'll have Tommy on here more often, frequently after this, but there was a match one time, and now this skips around in the career a little bit, but my dad against Tommy, and I don't know how this come about. Now, Tommy can probably tell us, but they was in a boxing match. My dad against Tommy Rich in a boxing match in Evansville, Indiana. Now, this had to be when Tommy, how old could you have been, Tommy? 20?
I was just 19, breaking 20? Into business. Yeah, I was probably 19. That's when I first started. And I don't know how, but we ended up in a boxing match.
Now, I'm talking about with boxing gloves and taped around like
and these boxing gloves, they wasn't red. They was some big gloves. I got in that ring. I'm bouncing around. Bit that Tommy a couple of times.
Big baby face now.
He says, come on. So I bit him a few more times. I'm dancing like Muhammad Ali. My fist started up over my head. By the time I got done, they was down to my belly button, and Tommy Gilbert was beating the shit.
He said, my dad was saying, come on, kid. Come on, kid. And he said, what'd you say, Tommy? I can't. I'm done. Yeah. But it's just funny stuff. Like I said, gee, my stuff's more, Tommy, I told him, we can tell him some stories that people will roll and laugh about that I think people will like. But stuff like that, to me, is some of the greatest stuff that nobody has ever heard or anything. And I mean, it's just.
And it is. I mean,
really
that's
cool.
And it's like,
look here, this is a funny story, too. Now, Tommy, and this was when he was just starting. I don't even know if he'd started then. What about, wasn't you with him when they got the corn, come back from Memphisville? Listen to this story.
Yeah, I was working then, too. I don't remember who. Eddie Marlin just bought a brand new Lincoln. We come back from Evansville, and there's a little side road where you don't have to go through the traffic. So we take a side road. It's Jerry Jarrett, Tojo Yamamoto, me, and Eddie Marlin. So we going down that road, and all of a sudden Jerry just said, pull over, pull over. I'm thinking, what the hell? And so they pull over, and Jerry says, come on, let's get some of this corn. Now here we are in a dadgum $20,000 Lincoln, which was high price back then.
Oh, yeah.
So we ain't got no bags or nothing. We open the trunk, and we're just chunking corn, chunking it. We got that trunk, trunk half full. Yeah, oh yeah. Tojo out there in his little wooden stack shoe. I said, he finally took them off after it failed. Yeah, but it was, that's another thing. I mean, that's, yeah. And then we got home, and come to find out, you couldn't even eat the corn. It was field corn.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But now who would think, Gene, like I've told you, there's just so much different stuff, but just stuff like that people would never, you think, but we're going to work and working, but when we get done wrestling, we got to come home. It's like I've told Gene, I said, you don't hear the stories about us leaving, but stuff like that, there's a million things like that I just laugh about. It's so funny.
Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of Tojo Yamamoto, you got any fun stories about Tojo besides the one we just heard? Because he's the guy that not a lot of younger people necessarily know a lot about.
Yeah, I told Joe he was a different type person. I mean,
that was wasn't he the first person you won a tag team championship?
Yeah, I won the tag belts. As a matter of fact, the training I got, him and Jerry Jarrett trained me, and then we went the first big angle I ever did. We went. Like Jerry had his end of the territory, and Nick Goulas had his. So we went over and went to Birmingham and did a big angle with the Von Steigers. Carl von Steiger, and it was Carl von Steiger and Otto von Halen. Von Helen.
Okay.
But anyway, we did one, and of course I got my head busted. They was beating the daylights. Here come Tojo with them wooden shoes, busted their head. I mean, it was blood everywhere, and of course, I didn't. Yeah, we draw big money with it, which I didn't even know. I just was in awe of getting to do what I was doing. They say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, and I still hadn't worked a day in my life, man.
Tojo, he's another one that my family, I remember, was telling about when I was a little kid. And my dad and them said, well, they can say whatever they want about that wrestling, but Tojo was wearing them folks out with them wooden shoes. He was really hurting them with them shoes. And from everything I've heard, he was.
Oh, yeah, he would, yeah.
Tojo wore some people out just training them, didn't he, Tommy?
Oh, yes, he did.
Tracy Smothers has told some stories.
Yeah, Tojo, he was like vindictive. I don't know vindictive. I don't know what the word.
If that's not the right word, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that ain't the right word. Not vindictive, but he liked it. Inflict some pain on you.
I think he wanted. I understand what Tommy's saying, but I think Tojo was the old school guy that wanted you to quit. If you wasn't tough,
he wanted to know you wanted it.
Yeah, he wanted to know you wanted it, and he wanted you, if you couldn't take it, not to come back. I think that was his, right, Tommy? Don't you think?
Well, the time he took that wooden shoe and put behind my ear and was going to bust it with the other and told me I needed cauliflower ear, I said, no. I said, now, enough's enough, Tojo. I said, I can't do that. I said, if I get a cauliflower ear, that's one thing. But I said, I ain't going to stand here and let you bust my ear. But that's the kind of stuff that that Tojo did. I mean, like Dougie said, he just believed in this business, thought you ought to have a cauliflower ear. Well, I don't mind having a cauliflower ear if I get it the right way, but I wasn't going to stand there and let nobody bust my ear. But Tojo taught me a lot. I remember riding back from Birmingham, and he'd grab my ear like this. He'd let that mirror in that Lincoln have one of them mirror, the costume mirror, makeup mirrors, whatever. And he'd grab me by the ear, by my earlobe. He'd say, sell that. And I'd do like you, I wouldn't make a face. Then he'd do that right there. Oh, yeah, but I'd be going, and he said, that's how you sell.
Hey, He didn't ever say, "You no good son of."
I heard him call a lot of people that.
No, I know this is an audio podcast, but Tommy just demonstrated. I just sold for him.
And now Gene's got half of a cauliflower deal.
That's right. That's right. But I got a great story to tell later on. So, and see, this is a thrill for me. All these people are excited over there to be meeting you guys, at the Picture Perfect Event Center. But, here I am, huge wrestling fan all my life, and here I am getting to hear stories in a hotel room with Tommy Reach and Doug Gilbert. So that's pretty exciting.
And here we go, Gene. We're over here doing this, and I'm supposed to be doing pre-takes right now. So I guess one other time I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are getting cussed right now. Like, where the hell are they at? Where are they at?
But I think they'll be all right. Usually if you get back late enough, they're just happy to see you.
That's the lesson in wrestling, right? Is if you're going to be late enough, they're just happy you showed up, is what I've always heard. So that's good. You confirm that. So I know I personally want to ask you, Tommy, because we had fans send in questions for Doug. They send them in all the time, but we got a big collection of them. We asked Doug a whole episode.
Fans to send them in for Tommy.
Yeah, send them in for Tommy.
We're going to have Tommy every couple of weeks on with us and stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm fired up and looking forward to it too.
Absolutely. So any questions you got for Tommy, send them in. We're going to have him on frequently. This is almost going to be dangerous conversations with Doug and Tommy more than just Doug Gilbert. But we had a fan ask Doug, say, how important was it to you and Eddie winning championships, and did championships really mean anything to you? So I'll ask you that generalized question, but for you specifically, you having been a former, and this is not to disparage anybody that's held the NWA title in the last 10 to 20 years, but you having won the NWA title when it really meant something, when it was really a world title. Yes, when Harley Race had to believe in you enough to get in there and compete with you. What does it mean to you to be a former NWA World Champion?
And, Gene, like I said, I hate to cut you off or anything, but actually the former youngest, when it meant something, NWA World Champion.
Bottom line is I was very blessed. Kept my mouth shut, kept my ears open, just listening. And if you did that, then, a lot of these guys, I could go in there and they'd tie me in 16 knots. But because I had a good attitude, and they seen money, though. When I went to Georgia, I was a little old cornbread kid, 19 years old, 19 or 20. But anyway, when I went, and I'm looking around that dressing room, but guys like Abdullah the Butcher, Superstar, Ken Patera, guy that went to the Olympics. I wrestled him for the Georgia heavyweight title. And it's like, this guy could just tear me up. But they seen business, and plus I did, like I said, I listened. It's like dancing, man. You let somebody lead, and it's always good. And like with Harley, to me, the greatest world heavyweight champion there was, because he was a technician in that ring. He had, there's some guys, not mention no names, but you'll watch them and it's the same match. And I'm talking about an NWA champion. But anyway, it's always the same match where, like with Harley, he'd have a match with me, my style. Whether it be Dougie, he'd have Dougie's style, or whether it was you. He could wrestle with anybody and do their style. And you think, well, how does he know what you do? Because he studied it. Yeah. Harley lived it, he ate it, he breathed it. To travel on the road 7 days a week and be in maybe the Memphis territory for 2 days, then have to fly out to Kansas City for 2 days or something, and then have to fly wherever.
Go to Japan. Go to Japan for about 3 days. Fly back into California, work out there. Fly back to freaking Portland, work there, and just
people don't understand. Even us when you're working the territory, people don't realize the miles, the time you spend together. It's really till you get behind the scenes and look, and I'm not talking about just the wrestling. I'm talking about the everyday life of it, to where you don't butt heads with each other, because we all have a bad day every now and then, and just the camaraderie and everything. This is one of the greatest businesses in the world.
And here's the thing, and I don't think, and a lot of people think, well, that's all. They go to these towns. They're all friends. Well, Gene, we like to get along with everybody, but in all reality, there's about 3 or 4 of us usually that get along, and the rest, we travel kind of in little packs, and what I mean little packs, they might be 40 guys on the road together, but usually it's 2 or 3 together, these 2 or 3. Now, I'm not saying we don't like all the guys, but as far as what people get, it's the misconception that, they're all just great buddies. No, it's not like that. Like me and Tommy said, and don't get me wrong, I wish a lot of us would have been closer, but we wasn't. It was, you might have me and Tommy, then, 8 different carloads of people that me and Tommy never traveled with or done nothing. We'd say hello to or something, but that was about the extent of it.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
They was all the best buddies, and go grill out. I've heard people, and this kills me. They told me my uncle, Uncle Joe, he said, y'all was over at his house grilling, and y'all got along. I said, hell, I don't remember your Uncle Joe. Now, I said, me and Tommy might have went there, but as far as everybody going there, no, because everybody didn't really see eye to eye, didn't hang out.
And I assume the promoters didn't want it, they wanted it that way because that tension is what made it more believable back then, and what made the matches better, because there was that element of
that tension. If they got the tension between us, it kept the tension off of
off them, and two, it kept everybody working their own little deal and doing their own little thing, so it helped them out.
Because if you ever did get together, you all guys talk amongst yourself, like, hey, wait a minute, I don't think we're making enough money here, or whatever.
See, they didn't want that part happening. So if there was a little, animosity here or there, they didn't try to stop it. But they kind of,
But see, it's like I've told Gene before, Tommy, we ain't talked actually dollars and cents, but I've told him, you was on your deal, on a contract, a guaranteed deal. I was on a guaranteed deal. Now, we didn't care what anybody else was on, and a lot of times they wasn't on anything. But we was on our deals. Well, as long as we got our deals, and every once in a while we would think, damn, that's good. Maybe we should get a tad more. But if they didn't give us any more, that was cool, because we was on our own deals that we had set. Right. Now, the other guys, and see, a lot of times, a lot of guys would get hot about that. But why would you get hot why would you get hot about a deal that you made yourself?
Right.
And why would you get hot at Tommy about his deal, or Doug about my deal, when we made them ourselves?
Yeah. Because from the promoter's perspective, if you and Tommy say, I'm coming for X amount of dollars, and we don't agree to how many people are going to be there, and if 10 times more people show up,
right, that's still,
why should you expect me to pay you guys more? Because I paid you what you said you wanted.
Exactly. And we was good with that. But there was times that we did get paid more. But that was as far as us working hard and going out there, and a lot of nights having to work twice, or if somebody else wasn't there. We was the ones that a lot during those days that they would come to.
And you didn't get a guarantee unless you're putting butts in the seats.
Right.
So we're putting butts in the seats. Everybody, even if there is a little animosity, it don't matter, because it's a business. And at the end of the week, when they got paid, they was making more money, you know. So what if you was, instead of semi, you're on the third match, it don't matter if you're making more money, you know. So that third match might have been on the main event and not drawing a dime, and nobody got paid.
Right.
So you know, I mean, it just everybody made their own deals.
And that's what I told you. I said, and you know, anybody can say whatever, make any excuse they want, but I said at the end of the day, it was like, you know, we hope like if there's 6 matches, there's 4 or 5 at least angles to draw money. But I said at the end of the day, Gene, I said it's dollars and cents. Me and you, we would talk about TV, like I've told you before. After we'd leave TV, me and Tommy get down the road, we'd be talking about everything else. I said, what do you think of TV? And he said, I thought it was good. And I said, it's your draw, right? And he said, yeah. And I told him 90% of the time when what we thought after we left, 90% of the time, that's what it would do.
Yeah.
And then I told him, but also there was that 10% we thought it wouldn't. And then sometimes that would do good, where we did think it would. So it all...
I mean, you look at, because back then, I mean, you know, the 80s and 90s, it just wrestling was hot. I mean, you look at the territories today, which there ain't no territories. I mean, they just run city to city.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, just think about, like, on Monday we did Memphis. Tuesday we did Louisville Garden. Wednesday, Evansville, Indiana. Thursday they'd run a spot show because they didn't have a big show. Friday we'd do Two Below, and then we'd go to Memphis, do Memphis TV, go to Jonesboro that night, wrestle there, and then have to drive from Jonesboro back to Nashville or back to Lexington or wherever you had to drive to. And so we was always on the road and busy, you know.
And then you go laugh, but it's like when Tommy was starting, you know, I mean, it was a hot time during that time also with wrestling. Tommy told me I'd laugh. He'd tell me some stories and stuff. Me and him ride, would tell so many stories and laugh. And he said, man, I'm going to tell you, we was riding one night. He said he asked me about Rupp Arena. And I said, I worked, I think, in Rupp Arena maybe once, I think. And I think that was with WWF or something. And Tommy said, when we went to Rupp Arena, he said, after I just started, he said, it was like we was rock stars. And but me and him had been laughing about something. He said, you know what? He said, you worked at Rupp Arena, but he's talking about like in the territory days. I said, no. I said, that was after my days. And he said, that son gun. He said, you go out there, and which, I mean, it was drawing so good and everything. He said, we was like rock stars up there in Lexington, Kentucky.
And that is, I mean, when we started, Georgia started going to Ohio and up in that area too. I mean, it just wrestling was so hot that, you know, like I said, the 80s and 90s, that's when wrestling was good, you know. I mean, it just, and it's still good today. It's just, it's different from what we did.
That's something I want to touch on real quick, and I know you're not going to pat yourself on the back, but I think Doug can confirm this. You know, people talk about Hulk Hogan and him breaking out as a big star in the early 80s and all that, but before Hulkamania and WrestleMania and all that, you got on national TV on TBS in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and you were really one of the first national stars to break out as a huge babyface. And I don't think younger fans really know or even remember that, but it's true.
I had told Gene and Tommy that it's however you want to say it, but I told him in a sense of looking at it, to me, as far as looking at it during those days, you was kind of the Hogan before Hogan as far as national TV. You was the baby face that everybody loved, that, I mean, they'd get sympathy on. I mean, they knew, everybody wanted to pay to see you beat somebody. And when he asked me about being the champions, I said, the heels to me was always the best champions because guys, good guys like Tommy Rich would come there to beat them and cut those great promos to make the people come because they knew and they wanted to see their main guy that they loved beat the bad guy. I mean, it's a good guy.
They like to see you get your butt whooped a little bit, but they sure wanted to see you whoop up on them too.
And they want to see you lead with the title, right?
Yeah. And it just, I mean, greatest business in the world, greatest wrestling fans in the world. We're so blessed. I mean, I'm 68. I started when I was dadgum 18. So ever how many years that is, that's a long time for folks to still remember Tommy Rich.
That'd be 50, wouldn't it? And I'm not that.
50
I'm
years,
okay at math, but that'd be 50 years, right?
50 years.
And they still love you as much today as they did back then.
They sure do. Hey, they was buying those Tommy Rich shirts just a minute ago, right?
Yeah, that's right. They was buying them shirts, getting them pictures. And like I said, man, it was fun to see. And
Yeah. And you know what's was really cool time, which like I said, we have Tommy on here a dozen times and me and him tell us cool stories with Eugene, but one of the cool times was when my brother and Tommy tagged up, man. We had you talking about a couple good years right through there, man. That was some fun years in my life and everything. And like I've told you before, I'd go home with Tommy and stay with him half the time. You know, when I was out of school in the summer and everything, I'd go stay with him, and man, I'd have a blast and everything. But you talking about some good times during those days. That was some cool times also.
I can only imagine. Well, I'll tell you what, we're gonna give a little tease here at the end, because we don't want you guys to get too much heat. We're gonna get you back over there to the event center. We don't want to get you guys in trouble. But something I definitely want to talk to you about. Speaking of Eddie and Tommy, I want to know all about the new Fabulous Ones, how that came about, how you felt about it, and how it played out. And of course, the end of it is legendary. One of the greatest angles of all time. So that'll be the tease for the next time we have Wildfire on. We're going to talk about that at length. What do you think about that, Doug?
I better tune in for that one.
Oh yeah. That could be a whole 2 episodes by itself, but that'd be a lot and everything. But like I said, there's so much. I mean, Tommy's been multiple time. I did want to inducted him into a thing in Las Vegas, and I read so much stuff, which I knew most of it, but not everything. And I said, dang, I thought I knew all of this stuff. And I went to reading different things on him, and I said, dang, Tommy, I said, you've won more championships than anybody, hadn't you? But Tommy's done everything there is to do, and like I said, Tommy's been great with me and helped me a lot and everything, but
well, that goes both ways.
And everything, like I said, and with my brother and Tommy was great friends. See, that's the difference in what people don't understand. Eddie and Tommy, they was great friends. They knew what each other was going to do in the ring. Me and Tommy, as far as tagging, like he said, in the last great run that they had in the territory in Memphis, I mean, I could just look at Tommy, or he could look at me, and I know what he wanted me to do, or what he'd know what I wanted him to do, or what we was going to do. You didn't have to say nothing. And when you can do that with somebody, you've got chemistry. And like I said, it wasn't because we rode down the road and said, hey, you do this when I say this, or you do that. We never talked about freaking.
You mean y'all didn't spend 2 hours in the dressing room, guys, going over every spot?
Hey, look, you know what I spent maybe 30 minutes or an hour, a few nights doing, just looking for him or something like that. But no, we didn't. And it wasn't looking for him. We won't talk about wrestling. It was just, I said, where did he go to? But like I said, but we had a bunch of friends and stuff, and they'd come in and get us and carry us out, and we'd talk and everything. But it was just we was around so many different places and had so many different friends and everything. And my friends carried me this way, as far as like people that come to the matches just that had called us that we knew growing up and everything. And one night we sitting there, and Tommy gets sitting outside talking, and somebody not think about it. Get about time to go to the ring, and I'd say, any of y'all seen Tommy anywhere? And they said, no. And the last thing me and him had talked about was anything about wrestling. We'd get ready to go to the ring. I'd finally find him. He'd come back, and I said, you ready? We're on next. And he'd say, okay, I'm ready. Grab his jacket, and we'd start to the ring. We'd get to the ring. He might say 1 or 2 things to me about something that we might do, but it wasn't nothing that we was actually going to do. But that's, like I'm saying, when you can have somebody like that, it's got a special deal.
I remember in Corinth one night, you guys were, it wasn't the match yet. It was y'all were going to run in on something, and you guys were talking, and Tommy had one of his boots unlaced. The other one was laced about halfway up. And Tommy goes, is that our music? And he comes running in the ring with one boot completely unlaced, the other boot half laced up, but the fans still popped. It worked.
Stuff happens,
It does.
All right,
but
man.
Hey, Tommy, we're so happy to have you on here. And like I said, Gene, we'll have Tommy back on with us shortly.
We got to do the Fab thing, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're for sure we'll do the Fab thing. But, hey, guys, listen, thanks for listening to Dangerous Conversations. And, hey, we'll talk to y'all later, and peace.
Hey, everybody. I know this week's episode was a little shorter than what you've become accustomed to here on Dangerous Conversations. But as we mentioned during the interview, we had to wrap up and hustle Doug and Tommy back across the street to the Picture Perfect Event Center, as they were both slated to be a part of that Night to Remember event. Both Doug and Tommy each went up and spoke during their Rivalry for the Ages presentation to Superstar Bill Dundee and Jerry the King Lawler. And they both spoke about what that rivalry has meant, not only to Memphis wrestling, but the wrestling business in general, as a whole, and to them personally as well. Doug was very excited to have the opportunity to be the one to induct his good friend and former tag team partner, the Dirty White Boy, Tony Anthony, into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And what a class it was for Tony to be inducted with, going in alongside the Rock and Roll Express, Sir Mo, Michael St. John, his good friend and bitter rival, Dr. Tom Pritchard, PG-13, Nightmare Danny Davis, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, and Terry Golden. It was an amazing night, and I was privileged to get to be a part of it. And I was privileged also to get to hang out with Doug and Tommy all afternoon. And we want to thank our buddy Tommy Wildfire Rich for joining us on this episode. I've been looking forward to it. And of course, Wildfire delivered as always. And we look forward to having him back on the show frequently in the very near future. Now, by the way, before we get out of here, I just want to let everybody know, if you have an upcoming wrestling event, autograph signing, collector's show, Comic Con, or any event or booking that you would like to inquire about the services of Dangerous Doug Gilbert and or Tommy Wildfire Rich, just send us an email at DougGilbertPodcast@Outlook.com, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible to find out more information about your event, and we'll do our best to make that happen for you. Also, if you're interested in advertising your event, business, or product to the listeners of Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert, as well as across all our social media platforms, you can send in those inquiries to DougGilbertPodcast@Outlook.com as well, and we'll get back to you about trying to make that happen also. So remember, check out DougGilbertPodcast.com. There you can find links to all things related to this podcast and to Doug himself. There are links to the Dangerous Conversations Facebook page, where we post all sorts of great content regularly involving Doug and his whole family. We've got the Dangerous Conversations X, formerly known as Twitter. Plus, we've got the Dangerous Doug Gilbert Facebook and X pages as well, where you can keep up with everything Doug has going on personally, like upcoming shows, signings, conventions, you name it. You can keep up with all of it by following Doug on social media. He appreciates the support, and if you really want to show your support, check out the Gilbert Family Pro Wrestling Tees store, featuring a tremendous array of t-shirts featuring Doug, Eddie, and their father, the late, great Tommy Gilbert, as well. And if you've enjoyed the show that you just listened to, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening to it at. We greatly appreciate it. It helps a lot towards building up the podcast in the future. You can check out the YouTube channel at Retro Wrestling Archive. That's youtube.com/@Retro Wrestling Archive. But you don't have to remember that. All you got to remember is DougGilbertPodcast.com. And there's a tons of matches featuring Doug and Eddie and Tommy Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich that you heard on this podcast. There's a whole playlist of his matches as well. You can just go and check out the playlist for everybody. Plus, there's tons and tons of old school wrestling content, plus almost every episode of USWA Championship Wrestling from 1990 through the end of 1997, plus multiple years of the CWA Memphis Wrestling throughout the 80s. So make sure you check all that out over at the YouTube page. Plus, don't forget, you can find all things related to my popular Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast at uswapodcast.com. And last but certainly not least, we are proud to be a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Go on over to WrestleCopia.com to check out all the great pro wrestling related podcasts and other content that our friend Ray Russell provides over there. You'll be glad you did. And we will catch you here next week for another episode of Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert.
Congratulations, you won it at Augusta, and it's great.
Thank you very much, Ray. Just like a dream come true. The biggest thing that ever happened to me in my life, and even right after the match was over, I knew that I got to 1, 2, 3 count, but when I come up off of Harley Race, I don't know if I just didn't realize it or couldn't even comprehend it. I don't know. Just like I said, I'm all fired up, excited, and I just like to think, I'd like to thank all the people, they've been with me all the way. I said home is where the heart is, and there's no doubt about it. Georgia is my home, and I want to represent the belt for the people. And this isn't just my belt, it's the people's belt too, because, without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, Freddie.
Tommy, the first time in history anybody from Georgia ever won the NWA World's Heavyweight Wrestling Championship. It's got to be the biggest thrill, and rightfully so, of your life.
Well, Freddie, you know what can I say? You know, it's the ultimate high of your life. You know what? You know, just like I said, my first dream was to be a wrestler. Then, you know, I become a wrestler, and then I shot at Harley Race, and I didn't do good, and I wrestled him before, and I thought it was the end of everything. You know, just like I said, I went home, and I thought I'd never have a chance again, and I come back to Georgia, and I got my chance, and but the people was behind me all the way, and there wasn't, you know. After it was all over, and when Ronnie West grabbed my hand and raised it up in there, you know, Freddie, I knew it was there. I knew I'd finally got what I'd been working so hard for.
Yeah, they said there were tears of joy in the eyes of those people in Augusta.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.